The fall of the Kuomingtang to the Chinese Communist Party was a momentous historical event that affected the world balance of power and the lives of 600 million Chinese. While acknowledging the Communist Party's military strength as a key reason for the development, we must more closely examine the reasons the Kuomingtang regime was unable to remain in power and withstand the Chinese Communist Party movement. We will take you through the history of the Kuomingtang and dive into the domestic and international political and philosophical factors that weakened the Kuomingtang and in turn led to the communist takeover. Ideological beginnings of the Kuomingtang can be traced to 1905. Sun Yat-sen and Huang Dian founded Tongmenghui in Tokyo after the failure of 100-day reform. They were able to garner the support of Chinese citizens frustrated by Qing's resistance to reform, and began to advocate the creation of a republic, which eventually led to revolution. The Republican Revolution began in October 1911 with the Wu Cheng Uprising, and in March 1912 the Republic of China was formed in Shanghai, with Sun Yat-sen as president. Sun Yat-sen soon resigned in favor of Yuan Shikai to centralize political power in Beijing. However, a power-hungry Yuan went on to perpetuate the assassination of Song Shaoren, a key member of Kuomingtang who Yuan saw as competition. Sun Yat-sen and his allies escaped to Japan, and in November 1913, Yuan Shikai outlawed Kuomingtang and ejected them from the legislature. Just a year later, World War I began, and Japan took over Shandong, Manchuria, and parts of eastern Mongolia in pursuit of pushing back the Germans. In the face of Japanese advancement, Yuan Shikai did nothing to thwart their efforts, and instead sold the honor of the country in order to buy himself temporary peace during which he crowned himself emperor. The move triggered nationwide protests, and regions lost respect and trust in the central government. Sun Yat-sen's vision had to be put on hold. The regional fragmentation plunged China into a warlord period, during which the central leadership is chaotic at best and non-existent at times. In 1919, the May 4th demonstrations reinvigorated the spirit of resistance and revolution. It was a massive student demonstration against the governments in Beijing and Japan. Sun Yat-sen returned to Guangzhou and reorganized the Kuomingtang in opposition to Beijing, and eventually, in 1921, formed the Southern Government in South China. Sun turns to the newly formed Soviet Union for support. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, had its own agenda and supported both the Kuomingtang and the fledgling Chinese Communist Party, which created the problem of conflicting interests. To try to balance the opposing parties, the Soviet Union sent a representative to broker cooperation between Kuomingtang and Chinese Communist Party. This becomes complicated because Chinese Communist Party members were encouraged to join Kuomingtang while still maintaining Chinese Communist Party identity. In turn, the introduction of Chinese Communist Party into Kuomingtang created divisions within the party that weakened the clout of the party and diminished the political capital of the leadership of Sun Yat-sen. In 1925, Sun Yat-sen dies and Chiang Kai-shek takes over. He was able to bring most of China under the rule of Kuomingtang through the military campaign known as Northern Expedition. Chiang Kai-shek formed alliances with some of the warlords in the north after defeating the warlords in the southern and central parts of China. He then drove the Chinese Communist Party out of their bases in southern and eastern China. But meanwhile, Kuomingtang was beginning to experience internal conflicts that led to a weakening and destruction of the party. Two major factions emerged on the left and the right, but to find each of these factions was very complex and became cumbersome obstacles in the pursuit of central control. Despite this factionalization, the Kuomingtang was able to enjoy relative stability during what is referred to as the Golden Decade, which began in 1927. However, regional warlords still held significant influence locally, making it difficult for Kuomingtang to concentrate political power. Nevertheless, the Kuomingtang leadership felt it was time to move to the second stage of nation-state building envisioned by Sun Yat-sen, so-called disciplinary rule. The reforms launched were ambitious and generally in the right direction. Foreign special privileges in China were reduced through successful diplomacy. The government actively pursued the modernization of the legal system, stabilization of prices, structural repayment of national debt, currency and banking reform, investment in infrastructure projects, improvement of public healthcare facilities, and the outlawing of narcotics. In addition, significant efforts were allocated to boost industrial and agricultural production. The reforms were unable to achieve maximum success. By the time Kuomingtang was able to centralize control of China and solve its own internal conflicts, they had depleted much of their political capital and lost trust of the people. Kuomingtang was burdened by foreign debt and having to constantly compromise with neighboring regional powers. In the north, Japan was expanding its imperial ambitions and incessantly encroaching on the nascent republic. On top of political instability and foreign threats, economic woes also plagued the nation, with skyrocketing inflation and problematic income discrepancy, alienating the poor and the rural. These problems were further exacerbated by corruption within the bureaucracy of the Kuomingtang and Chiang's incessant push to eliminate the exiled Chinese Communist Party in the interior of the country. Unwilling to see the country fall into the hands of the Japanese, an internal coup took place, and Chiang Kai-shek was forced to form an alliance, however temporary, with the Chinese Communist Party to collect their efforts against the common enemy. The coup marked the weakening of the Kuomingtang from within, and the alliance gave the Chinese Communist Party crucial breathing time to regain its footing. In 1934, China finally declared war with Japan, with whom they have been fighting intermittently for 10 years. At the end of World War II and after a failed U.S.-brokered peace agreement, Kuomingtang and the Chinese Communist Party entered into a 4-year-long civil war, which officially ended on October 1, 1949, when Mao Zedong declared the formation of the People's Republic of China. Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomingtang supporters retreated to its last stronghold, an island off the coast of China, also known as Taiwan. Dominated by foreign colonial powers, China under the Qing dynasty was a shell of what it once was going into the 20th century. The 4 decades following the end of the Qing dynasty was characterized by unrest in China and unrest in the world at large. Visionary leaders emerged, but they struggled against the rip current of history. Chinese historians describe the affairs of unity and division as a cycle. Endured unity must be followed by division, and prolonged division gives birth to unity. Sun Yat-sen gave birth to the idea of a modern Chinese republic, but he passed on before completing his vision. The eventual victory of the Chinese Communists, then, is no evidence that Sun Yat-sen and his followers in Kuomingtang failed China. Rather, it simply wasn't their time.